night, we talked about Coots a little, made that nice play to pick up that assist on the Scott Laughton goal. But Sean Couturier this year, 19 points in 38 games. He did pick up an assist last night. It was his first point in 5 games. He scored a goal against Pittsburgh right before the holiday break, but that was it. His assist last night. In the last 4 games, he's been averaging 13 minutes and 12 seconds of ice time. He played 10 minutes even against Vegas. Like, that's real fourth line numbers right there. He averaged 18-17 in his first 34 games. But we saw him, he kind of came in with a bottom 6 role to start the year. He was playing like 13 and a half minutes a game in the first 5, so he's kind of back to where that was. Where do you see this going with Sean Couturier right now? Like, where do you see his game at, first and foremost? Like, Sean Couturier is what in your mind?
I think he has been meh. He's been fine, but not great. I don't think he's been nearly as bad as he was over the final 2 months of last season, to be clear. But I don't think he's been playing as well as he was playing in, let's say, November. I think there has absolutely been a dip. And there's a reason why I haven't been railing against the idea of his ice time dropping. I think that's fair. I think that, especially given the fact that the Cates line has been so good, that line deserves more ice time. Morgan Frost, like, that's the tough one. Is Couturier playing better than Frost? In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. They're probably delivering around equal value, just in totally different ways. Couturier is the guy that you feel comfortable putting out there in the final 10 minutes of a game when you're up a goal. Frost is the guy maybe you don't, because he hasn't been terribly defensively reliable, especially this year. You thought he made a turn for the better in that last season. This year, it's dipped again. He's no longer really a play driver, but I would say Couturier's play has undeniably dipped, but I don't think he's playing terribly, I guess is my answer.
If we were to look at his metrics, what do the advanced numbers or whatever, do you have an idea? Okay, is there a role he's best suited for based on what the metric, where should he be playing based on, one of the ways you evaluate things?
Well, it's tough to say by the metrics, because if you look at the 5-on-5 data since the start of December, no one in the forward core has bad metrics. Everyone on the team has an expected goals for percentage over 50%. Everyone's driving play. That's one of the reasons why it's been so glaring that the goaltending's been bad, because the Flyers have been a legitimately good 5-on-5 team. Now, is Couturier at the top of the charts? No, he's not. He's at around 54% expected goals for. He's at around 50% by the raw play driving. So shot attempts, shots on goal, things like that. He can play better. And it's probably more glaring that he can play better when you're looking at Noah Cates, and him and his line mates are up at 70% expected goals, because they've been incredible, and they're at 60% shot attempts and 60%, shots on goal, because they've been an incredible line. And you're like, there was a day when Sean Couturier was doing that regularly, when he was playing his best. So he's not playing his best, but it's not like the Flyers are getting crushed when he's out there. They're still controlling play. It's just that other lines are controlling play better than Couturier is. Now, I guess here's my answer. I still think that Couturier is playing better than Ryan Poehling. So I still think Couturier should be getting more minutes than Poehling. But I do understand why Tortorella wants to give this speed line, the NASCAR line, a shot. He wants to see if, hey, maybe that'll work. So far, I feel like the results have been mixed. And I do think that at some point, Tortorella is probably going to have to bow to the inevitable and put Couturier back with guys like Konechny and see what happens, because I just don't think Ryan Poehling is a top 6 center in any world, regardless of the wingers that he gets. So I think that is where this ultimately goes. But hey, it's John Tortorella. Maybe where this ultimately goes is Sean Couturier gets scratched because he wants to throw a bomb into the room again, and he can't manufacture a new goalie. So it's okay, well, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and I was wondering, you see him drop, and you're making the case that, it makes sense. Maybe Ryan Poehling isn't the answer, but there is no answer. It should be Morgan Frost. It's not. Yeah. And we all know how the coach feels about Morgan Frost anyway. So, I see it being Poehling. And we talked last night. It's I wonder if just playing Poehling like this is this is what you gave me, Danny. And I don't think there's that sort of tension between the two where he's like kind of giving the middle fit. Like, I don't think that's the relationship between the coach and the GM. So I'm just thinking like, okay, Coots hasn't played great. He might not be a stylistic fit on a scoring line. I watch him in the offensive zone sometimes. I'm just like, bro, what are you doing? That said, like last night, really nice play to get that assist. Maybe that's who the hell knows.
Yeah.
But
it was a great pass. It was a great pass.
And just like getting there, getting to that turnover, being there to make the play, just strong, solid play. We all saw what happened last year, and then we find out, like, oh yeah, he's having core muscle surgery and everything. Do you think the insistence on, all right, you know what, let's do this. Let's give Poehling a bunch of top 6 minutes that he probably isn't going to hold on to for all that long, while Couturier's maybe dipping a little in an effort to try to save his legs for the end of the season when you're going to need him a little bit. Like I just said early in the show, got a real tough stretch of games coming up. You're going to need Sean Couturier. Like Noah Cates ain't going to be able to carry you. You're going to need at least 2 centers who can win a faceoff and help you salt away a lead late in games and stuff like that. Do you think there's a little bit of maintenance going on here too?
So here's my answer to that question. If that was the thinking, I would have zero problem with it and would actually think it's quite prudent that, yeah, this is an older player who tailed off at the end of last year, and maybe you pull back on his minutes a little bit, so he's still strong in March and April. I would be totally cool with that, and I would actually praise them for that. I do not think that's what's going on. I think that John Tortorella is not that he's incapable, but it's really, really difficult for him to look that far ahead. He is so laser focused on winning this game that, to me, and we also have a track record of him not being terribly impressed with Sean Couturier, the player. I go Occam's razor here. I think the most likely explanation, the simplest explanation, is Sean Couturier has been dropped down the lineup because John Tortorella hasn't loved his game over the last few weeks. Because honestly, he's right. His game hasn't been great. It hasn't been terrible. I certainly don't think they should scratch Sean Couturier, but it hasn't been great. And we know that John Tortorella already isn't like the biggest Sean Couturier fan. So to answer your question, I would be totally cool with that strategy, and I would think that is an intelligent strategy. I don't think that's why this is happening.
It just, and listen, again, they didn't really have other options. Like, it's before Noah Cates really got going. Morgan Frost, really, really slow start to the season production-wise. But from like game 6 through right before the new year, October 22nd through December 28th, Coots was getting 19 minutes a night, 19:06 a night. There's a 2-month sample size of Torts going, I guess I gotta, like, it's gotta be him. But once his play falls off, which it has, like, there's no, it's very obvious. He's immediately back down in the lineup. Maybe it's a little bit of one, a little bit of the other, a little bit of a balancing act with Coots' workload. But I'm just trying to think ahead here, Charlie. Looking ahead to the future. This is Sean Couturier now. He's under contract through July 1st, or up until July 1st, 2030. How the hell does this end any other way than a buyout?
I don't want to go there yet, but I will say I have concerns, to be sure. My big concern, because this could just be a slump. Guys have slumps all the time. It really could just be a slump. But my big concern was Sean Couturier, and I don't remember if I left this comparison in my resolutions article or if I had it and then deleted it. But my big concern with Sean Couturier is that he is now Craig Kimbrell. And for people who are not baseball fans, who are not Phillies fans, late career Craig Kimbrell, he was on the Phillies a couple years ago. The first 3-4 months of every season, he looks like prime Craig Kimbrell. He is closing out games. He's throwing gas. He's a reliever. He's a reliever/closer. And he looks real good. And you're like, wow, we got a steal signing this guy for 1 year for a reasonable price. And he's going to be a key part of our bullpen for the back half of the year going to the playoffs. And then around the 2/3 mark of every season, he falls off an absolute cliff. And by the playoffs, he's completely unusable. That, I think, is my worry with Couturier is he a guy where, first half of the year, yeah, you're going to get, a reasonable approximation to, let's say, right before offensive breakout Sean Couturier when he was regular.
2016-ish.
Yeah, 2015, 2016 Sean Couturier.
Yeah.
You're going to get that version of him for the first 40 to 50 games of every year. And then the final 30 games, he's not going to be producing at all. I worry that could be a thing. But the thing is that we only have 1 year of evidence that that's a thing. And that could have just been an injury-driven aberration. But I'm keeping a close eye on Sean Couturier this season and the way it plays out the rest of the year. If he falls off a cliff again in the second half for 2 straight seasons, it's kind of like Morgan Frost. Like at some point, you have to be like, maybe this dude just starts slow. And that's something that you just have to come to expect from him. If this version of Sean Couturier just finishes slow, that's something that the Flyers are going to have to come to expect. And that obviously is going to influence what they do with him over the long term. I hope that he can show that he can be an 82 game a year effective player. And I am not ready to write him off, but I am keeping a close eye on him this year to be sure.
Yeah, last year it kind of made sense. He hadn't played a full season in since he was 26 years old. Now, part of that is injuries, part of that is COVID shortened seasons and everything, but it had been 5 years since he played a full season. Of course he ran out of gas, to be expected coming back from the 2 back surgeries. And now it's just trying to figure out where he fits into this team's future. They have plenty of time to figure it out. It's not like they have to make a contract decision or anything upcoming. And honestly, I mentioned buyout earlier, and you can't do it. You get almost no savings.
Not for a while.
For years because of the way the signing bonuses are structured. You save $500,000 for half of the buyout, which would be the amount of time he'd be on the roster anyway. It's very little. So there's really no reason to do that. It's just trying to slot people in and figuring out where guys fit. We've been talking so much about Noah Cates. Maybe he's carving out a role for himself. Maybe he really is a decent NHL 3C, a guy who can be a play driver on that line. And if you put him with some dudes who can score, maybe he'll even put up some points like he's been doing with Brink and Forster lately. And if that's the case, all right, Noah Cates, slot him in. Jet Luchenko, hopefully he's a 1C. But right now in my mind, he's hopefully a really good 2C. That's what I'm thinking of. All right, well, what does that make Sean Couturier? Where does now, for a while, it was okay. They have all these guys. They have Poehling and Cates and Laughton. They all kind of do the same thing. Now, as one guy especially really kind of separates himself and Laughton settling into a different role, it's all right, well, where does Coots fit? And they have time to figure it out. I don't see an obvious answer.
And I just think we are so early into this that there doesn't have to be an obvious answer yet. This is going to be decided over the next few years. For now, I am going to approach this as the second half of this year for Sean Couturier. It's a fact-finding mission to figure out what he can do in his 30s in the second halves of seasons. That's important because that's going to be an important piece of information that will guide you in terms of what degree he can be part of this moving forward.
We all silly like the mayor.